You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast on shockwaveskullsessions.com. And now your host, Bob Nalbandian.
I want to do a little intro here. I got my partner and producer, the Pino, Matt Hartnett. What's going on, Matt?
What's going on, Bob?
Not too much. We're actually Skyping each other. The reason I want to do a little intro is this is a really, really cool episode. It's with a couple of old school LA guys, LA Scenesters. Bruce Duff, one of the first publicists I met when I was doing the Headbanger fanzine back in like 83, 84, I think. He was working for New Image. He wrote for Rip and booked at the Knitting Factory and wrote for Music Connection, tons of magazines. A great guy, Bruce Duff. And, of course, Desi Benjamin. He was the guy I told you about that did that movie Scenesters. Have you?
Hey, tell me about that, yeah.
Yeah, good movie. It's on Amazon Prime. Now, I'm telling you guys right now, this is a different podcast. It's not a total metal podcast, so don't get freaking out on me about it. It's more on the 90s scene that happened in LA at the time, but actually really going back to 80, 85, 86, where it really started. Clubs like the Creem and even Club Lingerie. Desi also booked at the Coconut Teaser, and it was a whole different kind of scene, a pre-grunge scene. So it's a little bit more on the alternative side.
So it's kind of that period between the hair metal and grunge, kind of when it kind of took over, basically the grunge scene from the hair metal. It was like that kind of, like you said, Coconut Teaser. When I think of that place, I mean, I didn't grow up in LA, but I just remember going there and hearing stories about the Coconut Teaser. That was a huge place with a lot of bands that I guess weren't necessarily established yet and were kind of coming up, like, you know, even early Guns N' Roses, right? That was one of the first places they would play at.
This scene was happening at the same time as the what they call the hair metal scene on Sunset. I mean, we're talking as early as 1986, but it was kind of like the scene that came about in Seattle, the grunge scene, that kind of look and attitude. But again, this was 5 years before the grunge scene hit. You know, bands like Fire Hose and Jane's Addiction and, you know, the Chili Peppers.
Oh, so a lot of the folk metal stuff, too, that was going on, right?
You know, Thelonious Monster, all that kind of.
Yes.
Tex and the Horseheads and Gene Loves Jezebel. But I do want to let the listeners know Desi Benjamin was on a cell phone and the quality is not very good. I had to edit out a lot of the stuff that he said because it was just way too muffled. You just couldn't understand. So Bruce Duff came out really good, but Desi is a little bit muffled. So I'm just pre-warning you guys now before you start sending in all those emails.
Well, it's okay. You know, they can just blame it on the Pino here if anything. You know, just blame it on me.
There you go. Well, with that said, man, let's get right to this. It runs about an hour long. Desi Benjamin and Bruce Duff, and mainly talking about his movie called Scenesters, which is available now on Amazon Prime and DVD. And again, it touches the what they call the Melrose scene. All right, on this Skull Sessions episode, we got two big-time LA scenesters, let's say. My old friend Bruce Duff, who I knew back, Bruce, you were one of the first publicists I actually encountered when I was doing my old fanzine, The Headbanger, back from like 1982 to 84. You were working at New Image, was that correct? New Image PR?
Yeah, I started at New Image, I believe, in 1984. It was probably towards the end of the year, and I stayed there till it was either. I think I stayed there till the beginning of 1990. At which time I went to Triple X Records, which was one of my clients at the company. I just decided to go work for them.
And I remember you were working Alcatraz at the time with Yngwie.
That was sort of the big stepping stone for me because the guy who got me a job was a writer over at Music Connection magazine. I had actually gotten a record deal and thought I was like living the good life and got booted out of the band that was signed. That was a band called 45 Grave. Right. And then I was like, shit, I gotta get some money here. I gotta pay some bills. So I was hanging out at the Music Connection office. I go, hey, anybody know anybody hiring or something I could do? And this one of my fellow writers, Stu Simone, who coincidentally went on to play keyboards for Poison, he said, yeah, there's this guy from New Zealand. He's starting a PR firm and he's looking for people. So I met with him. He said, you bring me a client and I'll hire you. So I got Wasp to come in on the blood drive at the Troubadour. And then I was going pretty good, and it wasn't very long into it, maybe a year, and Stu got fired. So they gave me his client, Alcatraz, and it was very shortly after that Yngwie quit the band, started his own band, got his own deal. I became his publicist, and then it just was like, I sort of took off because all I had to do was show up and answer the phone because everybody wanted to talk to him. He got all these covers, and suddenly I was the guy that every shredder had to have for a publicist. Blessing and a curse all at the same time.
Right on. Yes, Stu Simone was the first guy, and then you took over New Image and working with good old Rocky Rockshire Records. That was a interesting situation.
No one remembers that story. That was
I do.
Amazing.
I could tell some stories. What was it, Hughes Aircraft that his wife worked? Or you can't
say? His wife worked. His wife was basically the insurance adjuster for Hughes Aircraft. And she was just writing all these checks to Dr. Rocky, whatever his last name was, just as if he was a physician, and just like millions and millions of dollars were being funneled out of Hughes Aircraft to her husband. It was complete. I can't believe they got away with it for as long as they did.
I can't either.
But,
like
I mean, millions of dollars.
And he had that, in Orange County, he had that killer rehearsal studio, and then he's got a record label through MCA and signs Alcatraz. It's like, where the fuck is all this coming from?
It was pretty bizarre. And there was actually another client we had that had done something similar, like embezzled all this money and started a record. I guess that was the thing in the 80s, embezzle money and start a record label. I mean, what do you know?
Sure.
Everybody has their own methodology.
Hey, and those are good clients to have. They have money to burn, right? And they don't mind spending it.
Literally. Money to burn and jail time to serve.
Just as long as you don't get, hey, we knew nothing about it, man. We're just a PR firm. Very cool.
Funny days.
Desi Benjamin. I remember Desi Benjamin from way back at the old Coconut Teaser days. Your Name Was Everywhere, of course, featured in the old Decline of Western Civilization movie, and now has a brand new, well, I wouldn't say brand new, I guess the movie's been out probably about a year now. Great documentary movie. You know, a lot of people ask me about the Inside Metal movies if I'm going to do something on, the latter 80s or the 90s, and I say, what's the point? Desi Benjamin already did it. He's got a movie called Scenesters out, and it's available, I know, on Amazon Prime, and I'm sure a lot of other Google Play and on DVD. Why don't you give more information, Desi?
Basically, the scene got splintered in 1985, and it came together under one roof. The dance clubs and the rock clubs all combined together, and that was a unique experience. It's a lot of dance, a lot of goth, a lot of rock. Everybody looked the same. It's like Hanoi Rocks meets Lord of the New Church meets like Love and Rockets meets Nikki Sixx. Everybody was welcome,
And that was interesting because, growing up in L.A. and being there through the 80s and, of course, into the early 90s, you saw that kind of mixture, and you mentioned about the whole goth rock and that. And I know, Bruce, you were in that band 45 Grave. It kind of reminded that post-punk goth rock, Christian Death, 45 Grave.
Well, yeah, here in L.A. we called that stuff death rock.
Right.
I mean, we tried to do, because goth was sort of coming out and, there was the Batcave and all that stuff in England. But our stuff was sort of grew out of the Germs and like a little heavier driving punk rock of L.A. So we called it death. Actually, somebody, a magazine coined it, and we sort of all said, yeah, that works. We felt it differentiated what we're doing, which was a little harder rock, a little more mixed up than just the straight-up goth stuff. So that would have been like the Shadow Minstrels, definitely Christian Death, 45 Graves, Super Heroines. There's quite a few bands in that. And, Patrick Mata's band was part of that. A lot of stuff. What was his band? What am I thinking?
Community FK.
Yes, thank you.
Community FK.
Because you remember, Bruce, when I was working, I was managing that band Eden back in, and I think it was 84 when we signed with Enigma, the original Enigma Green World. And that was when I think that whole, before it was called alternative rock, but I remember Dean and Peter at Green World, who were distributing my fanzine Headbanger, they kept telling me about this band Jane's Addiction. And I remember they were managing, or they started Triple X, right? And they were kind of managing. This might have been just before Triple X. It was 84, I think, I was doing the mag from 80 up till 85, and they were the distributors. You told me about Jane's Addiction really early on, and I'm just thinking, what a stupid fucking name for a band. And then I started reading about them, and I think I saw them at the Marquee in Orange County or one of the places really early on. And I'm like, wow, this band is I didn't know if I liked them or not. I go, well, this is kind of different shit.
Well, a lot of people didn't, and I think that was a weird thing. Like a lot of record labels are going, nah, people aren't going to like this. And it's funny. You go to these shows. I remember my first wife, was an A&R person for Capitol, and we went one night to see Billy Sheehan's band Talus at the country club.
Right.
And I go, what do you think of this? He goes, oh, this will never catch on. This won't do good. I go, they've sold out the club, and they've never been here before, and everybody's singing along to the songs, already know the words. You don't think that's something that'll sell? Sometimes I just don't understand the A&R framework. But it was the same thing with Jane's. I go, everybody's digging this, man. Everybody's really into it. This will sell. People like it.
Desi, you were bringing a lot of that kind of stuff into the Coconut Teaser. That was kind of a mix. I mean, you had your downtown clubs, the Scream, of course, and then I guess, I don't know if Al's Bar was going on downtown then, but you had the Silver Lake scene that started. I think the Silver Lake thing started a little later with the Garage and Spaceland, but the whole East LA kind of had that different scene, and it kind of merge into the Sunset Strip scene with kind of like the Teaser, because the Teaser was on the Crescent Heights and Sunset, obviously, which was kind of just before the Strip area, but you kind of would have that mix where you'd have a lot of the hair metal bands, and you would have a lot of those Enigma bands, I would say, Tex and the Horseheads and all that kind of stuff. And I remember being on Enigma. I knew a chick at Enigma, and I was intrigued by that. And she used to say, oh, yeah, we got this band. They're playing the Scream. And I would go there, and it was like, wow, this place is just as packed as the Roxy or the Whiskey, but it's a whole different scene. You saw it in LA Weekly and Rock City News and all that. You heard about these bands, but it didn't obviously get the hype as, when people, especially people outside of LA, thought the LA scene, they thought the Sunset Strip glam scene, and that's why I did the Inside Metal Rise of LA Thrash Metal. There was a big thrash scene that was on the outskirts, Fender's Ballroom, the Olympic Auditorium, that crossover. During that time, there was a big alternative scene. And this is all pre-grunge. We're talking like 2-3 years before grunge hit. And I give a lot of the British bands credit. I remember when Zodiac Mind Warp and The Cult did their first album, it was kind of that crossover, a little gothy, a little alternative, Hanoi Rocks, of course, but it was gritty, dirty. It wasn't like the pretty boy glam.
It was created by Fashion and Melrose Avenue. They took a look at the English and brought it back. A guy named Alan Jones, who had Let It Rock and Flash Beat, really, dressed everybody. A couple other people, but it was great because you could buy really good clothes for cheap or free, and go to Jet Brag or Art Box and really like flashy clothes, and it was all together. People lived to go out. The problem is with the Sunset Strip scene, like the people would go to the bands and leave. There was no DJ, no people hanging out. Like get out, get in, out, and pay to play really killed that.
Absolutely.
It was so bad. The problem is people like the Doors, Motley Crue, Van Halen, the Eagles earned the right to be on that stage. Like Felix and his high school kids in the Valley would sell 100 tickets at $6, but they can preserve the whiskey.
Yeah, the pay to play definitely killed it. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I think interesting about the scene that, Desi's movie covers, and we were just looking at this the other day, a guy was over here, John Scarpatti, I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was a photographer in the scene at that time.
Totally.
So he put out a book, and it's called, I have it right here, it's called Cramp, Slash, and Burn When Punk and Glam Were Twins. And that was sort of the thing. Everything just kind of meshed together. Yeah. Everybody was checking everybody else out. And I go, well, we don't have to be segregated. What that guy's doing is cool, too, and I want to incorporate that. So, for example, by that point, I was in a band called Jesters of Destiny that was sort of this oddball metal band. They called us alternative metal, which I guess sort of worked. And we would play, around town, and I go back and look at the flyers, and the bands we were grouped with, were the Dickies, Jane's Addiction, Love and Rocket, Lines of Ghosts, Thelonious Monster. I mean, there's 4 bands right there that are all completely different ends of the world. And we went with them, and that was a show, and everybody had a good time. I mean, so it sort of reminded me of when I was a kid, and you'd go see, I remember going to shows where it was like Deep Purple, Buddy Miles, and Fleetwood Mac.
Sure.
And that wouldn't happen nowadays. Yeah. But I think the LA scene at that time was kind of like that, and it was just a little bit more of a potpourri and a hodgepodge, and people were their minds were open to it. And then, like Desi was saying, you'd have Matt Dike spinning in the next room playing some crazy ass stuff you never heard, and it was just all a big thing, and it was a lot of fun. And maybe you could be at English Acid, and Janice would have all these videos that you'd never seen of all kinds of different stuff, and it just got everybody's mind opening. Well, what if we blend funk with like glam, or whatever? Just what if we incorporate classical music with it? I mean, it was just like everything was fair game. Try whatever you think of and see what happens.
And Jesters of Destiny, they were on Metal Blade, right?
That is correct.
Yes.
And we got signed to Metal Blade, and Brian hedged his bet and created a label for us. We were on something called Dimension Records because he didn't want, the Slayer fans to buy the record and go, "What is this shit?" And he bummed out.
You were on the same label or was that Death Records, the same label that The Mentors was on? That might have been
he did sort of the same thing with the Mentors. He created a little label for them. Wow. I believe that was Death.
Right. That's
just
awesome.
Like Phantom of the Paradise.
Yeah. And there were some people that just were into the alternative scene, but you were always a real fan of metal. And I remember at Music Connection, you did that cover story on Armored Saint. And you did a lot of huge metal stories.
Well, I grew up on Purple, Sab, Zepp, the fucking hard rock stuff of the 70s. And by the time I got, a funny thing, by the time I got to like writing a lot and alternative and punk were really big, a lot of the people that were decent writers did not want to cover metal. And, when I started working for Rip Magazine, for example, I'll give you an example. Remember the band Jackal with the chainsaw?
Of course, sure.
So they were really, kind of ridiculous. But I made quite a bit of money talking with them. And at one point, a Lon friend calls me up and goes, "Hey, do you want to go to Atlanta and interview Jackal while they do this video? No one else will do it." And I go, "I'll go. I've never been to Atlanta. Sure, a free flight. It's a little vacation I'm getting paid for. I don't care who the band is." So I would take a lot of stuff that other people thought, "Oh, this is too square for me. I don't want to cover this." I go, "I'll cover it. You're going to pay me? Sure. Where do I sign? I'm ready to go." There was a lot of cool stuff that journalists could get during this time period that was just like an extra revenue stream, man. I was all about it.
Totally. And I remember, I thought that was like a breath of fresh air because at that time, Jackal came out, 90, or early 90s, 93, I think. And
like
by then, it was like all grunge and alternative. And here comes this band. They weren't like the pretty boy hair band. They had that southern grit, that AC/DC nastiness. And I think Kolodner actually signed them, which was surprising, correct. Which was a big thing for Geffen. And it obviously did really well. Something you mentioned and something in the title of your movie, Desi, Scenesters, is Melrose Boulevard or Melrose Avenue. And that was kind of the epicenter for that scene. And everyone talks about the Sunset Strip, which of course was huge with the whole glamier stuff. But Melrose, even since the early 80s and even going back to, going to the punk era, that was like the fashion area, but it was more of a daytime shopping kind of scene. But you went to Melrose any given weekend and it was packed during the day like the Sunset Strip was packed at night. And everyone from punks to death rock to glam rock to bands from the Zeros to Poison to Faster Pussycat to Motorcycle Boy to Pygmy Love Circus, they all kind of migrated together. And that was a whole scene of itself. And that kind of created a lot of the clubs back in those days, huh?
It was a shopping scene, like a club at night. The thing is, like, you didn't have cops, like, beating you up for passing out flyers. The cops would, like, find you for, like, handing out flyers. It's ridiculous. If you did a flyer on the telephone pole, you call the number, show up the show, and, like, bust you.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was working at BFI. They had a rap wave. I remember did a sign from Wolf. The cops showed up, like, ready to bust the guy that headed up the label, the rap division. And, like, come on.
Well, I think there was a pretty hefty fine for that, so it was actually like a revenue stream for the city. That
Totally.
We can make some money doing this.
Yeah, they realized they weren't going to be able to stop it on the street, so I guess that was the way, just to start fining the bands. And then word got out, and because I do remember people were saying that they were getting fined for putting out flyers.
And, like, people, like, would flyer, the Long Beach Arena.
Sure, everyone did.
It was great, but now the cops showed up, as they do.
Yeah.
As they do.
True. Well, they knew it was revenue, too. They knew it was money. These people had money. Well, when did, like, the Cat House start? Late 80s, early 90s?
Late 80s, yeah.
Late 80s. And that, it seemed to me, kind of combined both. And all sorts of bands. I mean, I know Ricky, I saw a lot of bands there from, even when grunge started. I remember seeing the very first shows in LA by Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, as well as, bands like Megadeth and Suicidal Tendencies. Plus, you had all your total glam bands playing there, of course. Faster Pussycat, Guns N' Roses would do jams and shows there. That was kind of when you did see that crossover. And, of course, Rip Magazine, where you were writing, Bruce, they were doing a lot of more eclectic stuff. They were doing a lot of the grunge stuff and then, Faith No More and bands like that. And it all was a part of kind of the metal scene. Then it kind of got all separate. And no, we're not metal.
Well,
we're
grunge, a lot of those grunge bands were basically, Alice in Chains is basically a heavy metal band.
Totally.
And Soundgarden is too, really.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just what they were into, and they took their own spin on it. And, grunge was the 90s equivalent of new wave in that it really didn't mean anything. It was just a marketing term to lump all these bands from the Pacific Northwest together to sell them back to everyone else.
The Clash was considered new wave to market it. It's a punk band.
I remember when Tom Petty first came out, he was considered new wave.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
again, it's just a way to, this is the new thing, you need to buy it, here it is. If it had been 2 years earlier, he'd have been, marketed as the new Rolling Stones.
Joseph owned the store, Final Fetish. He was on Melrose. Everybody showed up to see what he was doing. Joseph Brooks. And he was a DJ at Cat House. He was the guy. Come to think of it.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, Desi, because the record stores, of course, Vinyl Fetish was a big record store out Melrose area. And back then, I remember early 80s, when I was a kid, I would go, Aaron's Records. I don't know if you remember Renee's All Ears.
Sure.
Yeah, that was good. They were originally, Aaron's was originally on Melrose before it went to Highland. Then you had Bleecker Bob's, and you had, Moby Disc. That was a scene in itself, the record stores. You would go in there, you would get turned on to new music by the people at their record stores. And then all the metal stores, you had Oz Records with Brian Slagle out in the Valley, and, the record swap meets. And
I would go to Rhino.
Rhino, too, of course. That's right, on Santa Monica.
No, Westwood.
Westwood, okay, yeah. Right. The West Side, that's right. I rarely made it out to the West Side, but Rhino was definitely a big one and that was before it became a label, right? It was a record store.
Yeah.
Well, there was, during this whole scene you're talking about, there was a bit of a thriving West Side club. Part of all this too. There was Club 88, which didn't go into the 90s, but that was an 80s one. The Music Machine. I played at the Music Machine with Stiv Bators and Cheetah Chrome. Well, and Madam Wong's West.
Sure.
Was it maybe the hippest club to play? But it was crammed with bands. 2 stages up and down. 8 bands would play there every night.
Yeah, and Raji's at Hollywood.
I guess on Hollywood Boulevard. That was more punk. That was really the clubhouse for most of us that lived in Hollywood, because you could just roll in there on any given day and hang out and just see what everyone was up to. And because they had that upstairs area with the bar and the pinball, you didn't even have to, really pony up to go see the show. You could just kind of hang out and see what everyone was up to. And if you wanted to see the show, you could probably get in anyway.
Yeah.
That was really the favorite place for most people. And of course, Creem would be where you would go. That was your weekend out,
right?
To see something that at the Scream, because those were always pretty special shows.
Now, the Scream actually had the two. They had downtown, and then they had the one on Highland where the Cat House was, too, on Sunday.
Well, by then it was Club with No Name, I think, when it went to Highland.
Right.
And then the Scream was, where was the first one, Des? It was in an old hotel, and then it went to the Park Plaza, which was where a lot of people remember it, but it had a dingier, weirder location.
The Embassy
I don't remember
Hotel.
what it was called. What was
the
that?
Embassy Hotel.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was actually the coolest one.
I never went to that. Unfortunately, I missed.
Yeah.
I moved. I was an Orange County guy, so I moved to LA in '91, and even by that time, the club scene. Of course, I was a little too young for the Starwood and all that. I of course hit the Whiskey Roxy, all the Hollywood clubs, but in the '90s, as soon as I moved to Hollywood, lived right off Hollywood Boulevard. You had, as you guys remember, Exposure 54, which was a killer place, 3 different rooms, and you had.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Yeah, of course, the Cat House, then Bordello's, and you had the Thunderdome, which was the old Florentine Gardens, which was a huge place, and you would see everyone from Armored Saint to Motorhead to Badlands to I saw Pearl Jam as Mookie Blaylock open for
that was their first show.
Yeah, opening for Alice in Chains. So I mean, you had all sorts of killer shit there, and that was. You had national acts and the local acts, and we're talking early '90s. This was still going on.
And we were just talking about this the other day. Another thing about a lot of those places that was, I can't even figure it out. For example, there was a place, the disco, Circus Disco on Santa Monica Boulevard. It's gone now. They tried to make it a historical thing. But for a while, even though it was a big disco, they were having like these Sunday night rock shows in the 90s, and you would go, and as my recollection is everything was free, and there was like this outside area with like a 30-foot long banquet area, and you could just walk up and grab a plate, and it was like a smorgasbord. You could pig yourself out and just eat all this food and then see bands, and literally the only thing you were buying was drinks. Everything else was just bands were free, food was free. And there was a lot of places like that, and if you timed it right, you were on the musician budget, you could literally basically have dinner every night for free if you timed your clubbing properly. It was incredible. And with the happy hours and stuff around town, it was amazing.
The Coconut Teaser did that too, I remember, right, Desi?
Yeah,
you had that patio with the food, and it was a smaller club, but you had that little downstairs basement. You might have an acoustic show or some dance thing. Then you had that middle room where you would have a DJ playing some psychedelic music with videos going. And then you had the main stage, the little small area with a giant pole in the middle and the bar. And then you had the outside bar and patio and a little food area. So definitely
cool. The teaser was an over 21 place. However, I got it to be 18 on Sundays because of the hot dogs. So to give away free food, I could go up the age limit as being the first to have the back line.
Yeah, that was a good thing. I lived over on Harper, so when I first moved here in the tail end of the 70s, I was walking distance, adding in like a 4-minute walk to the Starwood, and then when that went belly up, I was about a 4-minute walk to the Teaser. So it was nice to have, those were my in the hood clubs.
Where was Circus Disco?
That was on Santa Monica. That was right next door to where they did
Lumberyard.
Yeah, the Lumberyard, right next door to the Exposure 54, right? It was.
I think Exposure 54 was there for a while.
Oh, okay. So you're not talking about the Arena, because there was a place called the Arena, which was a.
No, wait. Yes, it was called the Arena. That's right. The Arena was part of the disco.
Okay, yeah, that
it was like a separate. It was a separate building, but it was on the same property. It was owned by the same people.
Yeah, it was gay fun. Established. They have certain.
Yeah, so there was like a big square room. I think that was the Arena, and they just had this massive PA in there. And then, if I'm remembering right, because it's torn down now, the Circus Disco part was a circular building, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So they were sort of, and then they shared a parking lot, and
yeah, exactly.
And it was right off the street, and their only neighbor was this lumberyard, so it was impossible for them to bother anybody.
And then, of course, across the street, or not directly across the street, but nearby, you had the Dragonfly, which I think was that when that started, the early '90s as well, right? Dragonfly.
Yeah.
It's
still there.
Yeah. Oh, wow. One of the few clubs
I think
left.
they do plays now, I think.
And they had all those bands, like the Motorcycle Boy, Betty Blowtorch, Pygmy Love Circus, all that kind of stuff too. I mixed it with a lot of the metal back then, which was kind of cool. It was that was a cool place. I like that club.
It always had good sound.
And then, of course, you had Club Lingerie, which is always known as the alternative place. And when was Lingerie around, Bruce or Desi? Was that from the 70s, too? I don't remember when that came.
No. Well, back then it was, in the 70s, it was a place called Sold, SOUL''D, Sold Out. And it was a black club.
Okay.
And I think
remember it was around.
Kurt might have actually been a part owner of that. I'm not 100% sure. But then he turned it into Lingerie. I don't know the exact year, but Brendan Mullen became the booking agent pretty much right away. And so he was doing all. Brendan was super eclectic booking, and you'd see Sun Ra there or Diamanda Gallus I saw there. You could see some crazy stuff, and he was a real respected booking agent. So he always had wonderful stuff. And then on Monday, it was always free. They were the first. I think they were the first club to do the free Monday thing, and it would pack out, and it was a blast. There was always good shows, too. You see the Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction. I mean, it was good stuff.
I saw Tool before Tool got signed there a few times, and also Rage Against the Machine, and I think I saw his Tom's old band, what was it, Lockup?
Lockup, yeah.
Lockup. And then they did some metal shows, and we had, the bands I worked with, we did a few shows there, too. It was a good stage. Well, that's where we started doing Black Lodge, too, when John Bush, myself, and my buddy Toby started Black Lodge. That was that. But, we're talking, this was already late 90s.
Still there, too, but I don't know what exactly they do. In fact, Keith Morris and Steve McDonald's band, Off, did a record store show at Amoeba. This must have been maybe 10 years ago, maybe not even that long. And at the end of the show, I goes, hey, some of you guys like to get a beer. We're going to do another set across the street in an hour at what used to be Club Lingerie. And we're like, Club Lingerie? But what's there? And we went over, and it was configured differently. Everything was in a different spot, but it was the same place. And I was asking the bartender, what goes on here? We go, we have shows all the time. I go, how do you find out about them? I mean, is it on the web page or what? No, you just have to know. I'm like, well, great.
It was like those after hours. Remember all the killer after hours in the 90s that they had in East LA off Hollywood Boulevard, and then you had a couple in the Valley, and you had killer bands playing, and then you had these weird, we didn't even care. We would go to, I was living, you probably remember Howard Tiemann. He's a big tattoo artist now, but he was, he played keys in Guns N' Roses, and he did a lot of stuff, and he always knew, he was an artist, so he would take me to like a fucking Vagos after hour. I didn't know much about the Vagos. I didn't care. I was just like, oh, whatever. But it was all these bikers and stuff, and there was people doing drugs and everything out there. Then we'd go to like South Central LA.
Pretty loose.
Yeah, South Central, and go to an all black after hours. And it didn't matter that you were just, all right, cool. You knew people that knew people. And it was a bizarre scene. And it was huge though. But it was just like you said, you had to know or be in the know. But once you're inside, it's like a whole other world.
Somewhere in the early 90s, Tool and Pygmy Love Circus shared this pretty massive warehouse space that they had, and it was on Hollywood Boulevard. Yeah, they would throw parties there, too.
The Green Jelly Studio. The original one.
No, okay. They were there. So Green Jelly, here's some LA rock history for you. Green Jelly, after they kind of took off and had a hit, and they were on Zoo Records and all that stuff, they bought what had been Frank Zappa's old studio, which was down... I was on Sunset Boulevard down by the freeway, almost where you got on the freeway. Yeah. And you drive by, and it just looked like this little... It didn't look like anything. And I remember, actually, I went there and met Herb Cohen about some stuff way back in the 70s. And you would go in, it was this little reception area. It looked like you're at the dentist office. And then you go to the next room, and Herb had this massive office. And then on the other side of that was where Zappa rehearsed his band. And then when Green Jello took over... they turned it into like a video production studio.
Right.
And they had it was pretty successful for quite a while. I don't know what it is now, but that was a super interesting little facility, at least through the end of the 90s.
They did some big after parties there, but Herb Cohen and Frank Zappa had that studio back in the 70s, you said, huh? Wow.
until they parted ways, and then Zappa signed with Bennett Glotzer, who had this giant. Some of the ostentatious things that managers and people that were doing well had. Like, he had a place on Sunset Boulevard. It was this 2-story house, and he had his publicist in there, and the whole management office. He was managing Frank Sinatra and Frank Zappa. It's kind of interesting.
But the original Green Jelly studio was on Hollywood Boulevard at an old warehouse, and that's where Tool.
I'm thinking that might have been the same one as Tool used. I think they shared that.
Yeah, Tool did that live. Well, did the Opiate on the Opiate when they did Jerk Off Live and a couple of live songs. I think I was at that. I might have been at that show because it was right down the street from where I lived, and it was at like a small loft up in off Hollywood Boulevard, and that's where Green Jelly did their video, the serial killer, the home video that they released.
And Pygmy Love Circus rehearsed there because they shared drummers with Tool.
Do you remember LAX Records?
LAX Records? I'm not familiar with it. No.
I don't remember that either.
It's now Starsucker. The Circle Jerks rehearsed there.
Just the sheer amount of time, of days of the week that people would be out seeing bands, socializing, hitting the clothing stores, hitting the record shops. It was much more like a community, I think, than it is now. Now, again, I'm a little older and maybe just don't really recognize it if you're, on the east side, Silver Lake and Echo Park, that those are communities too. I mean, sometimes I'll go to shows there and I can sort of feel that when, like, I just saw Red Cross there a few weeks ago, and it was definitely that, like a high school reunion of sorts. But nowadays when you go see the younger bands, I think they have a similar community. We're just not part of it anymore.
It's definitely different.
It's different, but no one wants to do what their parents did, much less their older brothers and sisters. So everybody wants to have the thing that's theirs. You know what I mean? I felt that like when I was a kid, and like Jimi Hendrix came out, I go, okay, Beatles and Stones are okay, but this guy's mine. And I think everybody has that thing. It's like for a lot of kids, it was that British punk rock stuff. Like heavy metal's all right, but this stuff is for us. And I think everybody sort of, and grunge hit some kids that, think of all the kids that their life was over when Kurt Cobain killed himself. That was like somebody pulled the plug. It was like John Lennon getting assassinated. So everybody has a thing that belongs to them, and I don't think it's really any different now. I think just some of the things are, for example, Coachella. Coachella is a big scene. It's a big party, but I don't think it has much to do with music.
No, it doesn't. It's not. I wouldn't consider that a scene. The scenes back in the day, they were a real true scene. The Hollywood Sunset Strip was a scene of itself, different than the Silver Lake scene. You go to the Garage, you go to the Spaceland, you go to any of those, clubs there. If you see back in the 90s, like the movie Swingers, that was kind of that East LA scene, more of the yuppified scene, but you had your underground kind of post-punk scene there. And you had your, obviously the, like I said, the thrash metal scene that was on the outskirts. They would play places like, Watts or Fender's Ballroom or the Olympic, and the punk scene, and then the Seattle scene. There were different scenes where it didn't really. Now I think there isn't really is Silver Lake much different now that everything's gentrified and you have the internet and any bands could come out of anywhere and you would never know that, oh, this is, like the Seattle sound or this is that. Do you feel that's
Well, that's true. Everything's everywhere all at once. That's just the way it is nowadays. But I think even what you're talking about, the second half of the 90s, at that point in time, I feel like everything started to segregate. Whereas the scene like Desi's book's on in his movie, it was much more communal, and people weren't that uptight about whether it was funk or whether it was punk or whether it was metal or whether it was hard rock or glam. If it was good, and we can group these bands together, and so you would ping pong to all the different parts of town and see all the different bands and all the different venues, and everything was, the variety of it was a major part of the fun. And nowadays, I don't think that's really quite the thing, it's either super popular punk, super popular pop music, or, the commercial side of hip hop, or, it's a very defined scene. like a genre specific scene. Like, you know, we're just into alt rock, we're just into electronic, we're just into noise, whatever it is, and it doesn't mesh together too much. Like, you're not going to see a noise pop electronic punk show anytime soon, I don't think.
No.
What's your thoughts, Desi?
Oh, exactly. It was segregated pre-1985. Los Angeles pretty much died 1992, 3, and became now segregated again. The punk thing got way too violent in 85. And a lot of people checked out.
Yeah.
And, excuse me, the metal thing at the Troubadour got really stupid.
I agree.
Got, you know, like the warmth, like pre-warmth.
Floyd.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, come on.
Yeah, I think that's when it kind of got to the point of overkill. And any big scene that happens to grunge or whatever, once it gets commercialized and overpopular, I mean, you had your bands that kind of started into that scene, and even pre-Motley Crue, you go back to the start with their old, you know, Nicky's old band London and all, you know, you had that glam thing going on even back then, and then it just kind of carried over, and it got to the point where these bands weren't even from LA. There were bands coming from all over the place.
Well, Don Bowles said to me once regarding London, they were at the wrong time. Like, everybody wanted to do punk, which Nikki Sixx quit London, became a punk metal band. London was very glitter. Did you see London at the Starwood?
I never saw that. I never caught them at the Starwood.
Yeah, I saw them.
No, I'm talking about Bruce.
Yeah, when Nigel Benjamin from Mott the Hoople was their lead singer. I thought they were great.
Wow.
It was amazing, but, you know, like, it happened in the early 70s. Glitter.
In England, sure. The Sweet, early Bowie and T-Rex and Slade all had that kind of glitter rock thing going.
Well, what year was London? That was like, I want to say London was still going. I don't know if Blackie was in the band.
79.
1980, yeah. Rolling into the beginning of 1980.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the guitarist now isn't in the band anymore. So, you know.
Lizzie Gray, yeah, he's got Parkinson's, and from what I understand, not doing so well.
Yeah.
So what about like the pre kind of scene that led up to, you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, the Chili Peppers, and I guess the Loneliest Monster, they were pretty early on, right? And a lot of those bands from what, like early 80s?
The Chili Peppers was like 83.
Right.
82, 83. Thelonious Monster didn't come on the scene probably till 86, 87, right?
Might have been a little earlier than, but something like that, yeah. And they were rolling. Well, I saw them not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But yeah, and they still pop up once in a while. But yeah, they through all of the 90s,
right?
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
And that was always kind of like an odd, almost a. I don't want to use the word jam band because that means something else now. But it was like a, you know, kind of an all-star thing. Different people would pop in and out, say from Tex and the Horseheads or the Chili Peppers, or, you know, different bands that were kind of in the same subgroup, and then, you know, do a show with Thelonious Monster with Bob at the front. Bass player from the Circle Jerks was in the band, if I recall. So yeah, that was always kind of like almost like a group thing, and they would do all kinds of different covers and stuff, and so it was something that was kind of put together quickly for shows, you know, with the same 2 or 3 main guys, but a lot of the rhythm players would change out and soloists and stuff. It was an interesting group. I always enjoyed them.
Yeah, Enigma had a lot of that stuff in the 80s. There were a lot of labels devoted to that. What about this band that, I mean, because I remember there was a huge thing with the labels when the alternative scene started to break, like the Joneses and the Something Town Massacre or whatever. What was it? They got like these, they were all this hype and nothing ever happened. They actually did a documentary about it.
You mean Brian
Jonestown Massacre?
That's what I'm thinking of. Brian Jonestown Massacre. I'm thinking 2 different bands. There was Brian Jonestown Massacre, and there was another band that got. I think they did a documentary about these 2 bands, and
yeah.
The other band in the documentary is the Dandy Warhols.
The Dandy Warhols,
sure.
Okay.
The bands are still going. I saw Brianstown. They sold out the Fonda. Wasn't even a year ago.
Oh wow!
Late last year, like around Christmas time. No, around Thanksgiving last year. They were good.
Yeah, I remember they got a lot of hype for a while, and they thought they were going to be again, a problem with a lot of these bands, especially in that scene, was the drugs and just the insanity and the lifestyle that these bands led. That they just couldn't keep it together.
I don't know if that's restricted to any particular scene. That's kind of happened a lot throughout the history of music.
If you look at the bands, the Motleys, the Wasps, the Rats, I mean, you got your occasional casualties here and there, but when you compare that to, say, the grunge or alternative scene, I mean, even going back from, Soundgarden with Chris Cornell or Alice in Chains, 2 members of that band passed away, and Stone Temple Pilots, of course, Nirvana. It's definitely, I think, when it comes to hair, I think the 80s bands were more into, just partying and drinking and doing coke, where I think, heroin.
Well, the thing is, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana was punk inspired. There was no punk in Wasp. There was no punk in Armor Saints. Like Nikki liked punk, but
Nikki Sixx.
But as soon as he got signed, he did this Shot of the Devil and completely metal thing.
But now he's punk again because it's hipper, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Nicky's always done. I think he's an interesting musician. He's had his downsides when he wasn't up to his full potential. But when he is, I mean, do you remember that band he did called 59?
No.
It was like a sort of a side project. Super interesting stuff.
Before Brides of Destruction?
I'm not exactly sure. It's around the same time. I'm not sure which came first. Right. But it was more of I don't want to call it alt, but it was more of a singer-songwriter, still hard-rocking record that he did with another guy that I think he was related to in some way that was in another band. I can't recall the guy's name. But a super interesting record. And, you just never know what someone's going to come up with. If creative people come up with creative stuff at different points in time and can relate to all kinds of different things. I mean, as far as the drug thing goes, some people just got, way out of control. I remember before their first record came out, I had an assignment to interview Stone Temple Pilots. I went up to the record company, and there they were, and they're like these, fresh, scrub-faced boys from San Diego, all really polite and bright-eyed and ready to go. And I'm like, wow, okay. So, and thought the band was pretty decent, some good songs on that record. About a year later, I was DJing at English Acid. This guy walks up to me and goes, hey, man, and starts talking to me. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. And he's like, well, I'll see you later. I'm like, who was that? And some guy go, oh, that's the lead singer in Stone Temple Pilots. And he was so, a year he had turned into, Syd Barrett or something, or wow. It was just crazy. I didn't recognize him. And I was like, who is this babbling weirdo?
Yeah, I think a lot of these bands feel the need they have to kind of at least act like that, whether it's true or not. I mean, because I remember them. They used to be Mighty Joe Young. I think that was without the singer. They played a lot in L.A. at the time. I don't recall ever seeing them, but I remember seeing their name about and people talking about them. So they were kind of mixed in with, I don't know if it was kind of the hair metal scene, but they played all those clubs and stuff. And so they had been around a while, and I think they kind of found their niche. I mean, that was a funny thing, is a lot of these, when the grunge came over, and again, like you said, I always thought Alice in Chains, and even when Soundgarden first came over here with their first major label, the Loud Love, I saw them, at the Cat House in front of maybe 50 people, and they did Hollywood Live. I remember at the time of one of the foundations, and I fucking loved it. I thought they're bringing back the metal, like the early Sabbath kind of doom metal.
Yeah, I think I saw them with Pearl Jam at Hollywood. Now Hollywood Live is where they shoot Kimmel now.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw Soundgarden open it up for Southern Love Bone.
Oh wow! I remember seeing another great tour, and I actually saw it at Jezebel's in Anaheim. It was headlining was Voivod, and opening was Soundgarden and Prong. And what a killer triple bill. And that was when, Prong's record first came out. Loud Love was out. And I think Voivod had that one of the albums on Mechanics, where they did the Pink Floyd cover. I can't remember the name of the album.
Yeah, that's right. They did Astronomy.
Yeah, Astronomy, yes.
They're a band that was sort of like the Jesters, in that you see them on bills that just like what you said, you might not think of it. We saw them a couple of years back, just right before the House of Blues closed, and they were still great. And oddly enough, I just saw a post on Facebook over the weekend. My friends in the adolescents just did a show with Voivod somewhere in the South.
Wow.
Right. I'm actually not sure where it was. It was not anywhere near here, but somewhere else in America. And they go, wow, we just played with Voivod. They were so good. So it was,
they're still out there.
Keeps turning.
Yeah. But, I mean, before grunge became its own thing, when a lot of those bands started, they were considered metal. You would hear them on KNAC alongside, Wasp and Metallica, and they would tour with, Megadeth and Metallica, grunge bands.
Like we were talking about, it's really just a marketing ploy.
Absolutely.
Grunge was when you started seeing $80 designer flannel shirts, that's usually the harbinger of something coming to an end.
One of the earliest things I think I saw, might have been like 86 or so, when I mentioned, God, now I can't even forget, I remember their name, a British band that kind of started the whole Circus of Power, Bedlam and Angel.
Oh, you're thinking of Zodiac Mind Warp.
Zodiac Mind Warp, yes. They played, a buddy of mine from KNAC actually took me out to a show, and it was someplace downtown. I was really into the
Variety Arts Center.
Variety Arts Center. And the place was fucking packed. And I'm like, wow.
And little side note to tie it all together, Variety Arts was booked by Brendan Mullen, who booked Lingerie.
Oh, no kidding. I knew of the band because I was really into the whole British metal scene, and I had heard about them, and I know they were big in England, but I never had any idea. And again, going to that show, it was a whole different scene, whole different people than going to see, a show on at the Whiskey or the Roxy or at the time, and
that was the swing crowd.
Yeah, totally. And this was pre-grunge again. We're talking 86. And, this shit was happening in LA at, places like Scream, places in downtown LA back, 5 years earlier.
I'll tell you at the Variety Arts Center, my biggest memories, there were two shows probably a year apart, both headlined by Butthole Surfers, that were just unbelievably epic. Just amazing. That for a while they were the band to beat. Like their shows were just off the hook.
And they signed with Capitol, and again, they were a band that I believe William Howell signed them, or had a lot to do with signing them at the time. And I thought they were cool too. I had seen them live too, and I thought, wow, this band is pretty cool. And I did.
And John Paul Jones produced the record.
That's right. I totally forgot about that. And of course, he had sang a lot of, Jesus Built My Hot Rod by Ministry, and he had the singer, I can't remember his name. And he was acting, he was in a few movies too, wasn't he?
Yeah, Gibby Haynes. He was in he was in a Jim Jarmusch movie, Dead Man, the one with the Neil Young did the soundtrack for, that Johnny Depp starred in. And I believe another one.
Yeah. I think I saw him in CB4 too, actually. Like a small role.
Yeah. He's still around, still doing the amazing stuff.
I heard about Perry Farrell is doing a solo record. I'm sure it's going to be interesting.
Desi, what about the old teaser? Could you talk about some of the shows that really stood out from the teaser?
It was never a theme. You'd count down to the record companies. Like ASCAP Tuesday.
I remember the ASCAP nights were huge, and they had some really good bands.
Yeah.
Tuesday nights, ASCAP nights, yeah.
But it's, it wasn't a theme. Like Sundays was a theme because it was 18.
Well, the Tuesdays was more the record industry kind of thing. They made it like record industry night, so to speak. So, a lot of bands wanted to get on that bill because you would see the A&R guy, usually the new A&R guys and whatever, and all hanging out. But it was cool for the bands, though, to actually, get exposure and have a place to play because, like you were saying at that time, the Whiskey Roxy and I don't know if it was the Key Club by then or maybe the Billboard Live, but they were all doing pay to play.
Yeah.
So the teaser was the cool kind of hip place to play where bands could actually, good bands could perform.
The booking, one thing, and it was a booker, he liked blues. He liked anybody who had a girl singer. That was his high, the blues. He never got the Jane's Addiction or the Tool. However, the assistant bookers had to book them. He didn't get it. So it was not a theme. And the age limit was a killer. At least Brendan Mullen.
We played on some pretty good shows there. I remember we did a show with the Nymphs. That's pretty happening. And we did a show, I can't remember what it was called, but Duff McKagan had a sort of a little throaty, almost like his version of Thelonious Monsters, kind of a fun band that we played with those guys there. That was a good show.
He had a band called Loaded too that were kind of cool.
Yeah,
the Drunk Fuck.
This was something he just. What do you call
the Drunk Fuck?
Oh, the Drunk Fuck.
Drunk Fuck.
I remember
That's
that.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, the teaser was packed at 50 people in the band room.
Was that it? 50 people? You could get more than that in the main room, right?
No, come on. 50
I know
people.
I was in there sometimes where there was over 100 people. And It was all sardine can.
I've been there like that too, where it was just jam-packed. But the cool thing about that is you could ease out into the patio area or into the different rooms.
Yeah, but 50 people comfortably.
Right.
As opposed to the Whiskey was 300.
Yep.
The Roxy was 500.
And the Country Club was like 800 or 900, I think.
Yeah.
Or 800.
Somewhere along the line in that journey that the time span that the Scenester book covers, movie covers, and the AIDS became a thing, and that definitely, that had an effect on the entire society we live in, and it affected that scene too. The party was somewhat over when that came out.
Yeah.
Everybody had to take a different stand.
True. Is the Roxy even doing shows anymore? It's just owned by Golden Voice, right?
It is
Golden Voice.
Well, they're booking it. I don't know if they own it. But they've got shows happening all the time.
Okay, cool.
They have a 50-year release.
There's always all this controversy. Of course, the House of Blues got bought. They're tearing down. I don't know if they even tore down yet the Hustler Club right across the street, but that's obviously prime real estate area. There was always all this talk of building high-rise hotels where the Whiskey, Roxy, and the Strip is, the Rainbow. Is there any word on that? Or
I think the Viper's the next one to go. Yeah. That block got bought, and it's going to turn into another thing. So that I guess that affects. Well, there's a lot of stuff on that block, restaurants and what have you, and that liquor store that's been there since the dawn of man. And,
sure.
And I mean, if you roll the clock back, the Viper was
the
FM
Central
station.
Oh,
it was the
right.
Central.
Yeah.
It was part of the Filthy McNasty dynasty back in the 70s.
Right.
On the cover of that Sweet album,
Yeah.
Desolation Boulevard.
And, of course, Filthy McNasty's in the Valley. That was another club we didn't talk about. That was almost like the Sunset Strip brought into the Valley. But you had a lot of those Valley bands playing there, too. But that was
Valley
a fun
band.
club.
I met the guy who wrote Louie there.
Wow.
I can't believe I remember this. I was playing there with Paul Roessler in Twisted Roots, and it was the first anniversary of John Lennon's, I think. It was an anniversary of John Lennon's assassination, like he'd been 2 or 3 years. And I remember we did Happiness is a Warm Gun, and we were there pretty late, and these middle-aged black gentlemen who looked very straight came in, and they started setting up. What do you guys? I go, we play all night. I go, you mean you start at 2 and play to 6? And he goes, yep. And the guy I was talking to turned out to be Richard Berry, who wrote Louie.
Wow.
A funny thing. I
That's
just
classic.
happen to remember.
And ending this, Bruce, what do you got going on these days? You're still in a number of different bands, right? From what I'm
afraid so.
Yes, good for you, dude. One of the few that's keeping the
we
scene
try.
alive.
I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, that is one thing that is kind of odd that I've noticed. It's maybe a little less now, but if you're a punk rocker or just a rock and roll guy, there was like a time frame that you shouldn't be doing this at this age because it's not right. Whereas, a country musician, a blues musician, a classical musician, a regular musician is a musician for life.
Sure.
That's what you do. So you just keep doing it. So that's kind of my attitude. I don't really see any reason to stop playing.
Good for you. What bands are you playing in now?
I play in 3, which is maybe too many, but I play in Street Walking Cheetahs. I play guitar in that band, hard driving sort of a mixture of Detroit-style hard rock, all of the MC5 with Cheap Trick-style power pop.
Yeah, good band.
And I play bass in The Magnificent, which is a show band that does 60s soul music, dancers and matching suits and the whole bit. And I play bass in an Americana band called the Sacred Cowboys, which is fronted by W. Earl Brown, one of the stars of Deadwood.
Wow, right on. And Desi, what about you? You got obviously the movie Scenesters out, as I mentioned, on all over Amazon Prime and out on DVD. What else you got going on there?
Living in Vegas. trying to get my foot above water.
Well, Vegas is the
Really?
new Hollywood. All the Hollywood rockers are living in Vegas.
I guess. Yeah, well, you know.
How is the scene in Vegas now? I know you got Vamps, obviously, and getting a lot of good shows out there from what I've been reading.
Well, you know, I don't really go out. Somebody said to me, the new going out is staying in.
That seems to be true.
No, I've heard that as well.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any contact information you want to throw out before we end this?
I have a website for my management company, and that's BruceDuffMusic.com. So you can check that out. And I'm on Facebook. I'm easy to find. I'm not hiding.
All right.
Me too. I'm at Scenesters.com, and you can find out reviews, links to the movie, everything. Download photos on Facebook.
All right. Desi Benjamin.
On YouTube.
Desi Benjamin, Bruce Duff, it was a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, buddy.
Thank you for listening to the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. You can subscribe and listen to all episodes of the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spreaker, Google Play, and more. Be on the lookout real soon for our new website at www.shockwaveskullsessions.com. Go to our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for up-to-date news on the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Email all questions, comments, and suggestions to shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com.